At first glance, the forest canopy appears calm, almost static, a lattice of branches and leaves suspended in filtered light. But this stillness is an illusion produced by constant motion. Wind presses through the trees in uneven pulses, bending twigs, shifting shadows, and setting entire layers of vegetation into slow, asynchronous sway. For predators scanning this environment, movement is everywhere. Nothing holds perfectly still for long, and in that chaos of motion, survival depends not on blending into the background, but on dissolving into it so completely that perception itself fails. This is where the stick insect does not merely hide, it disappears. The stick insect exists at the intersection of biology and illusion, not as a passive object mistaken for wood, but as an active participant in the physics of its habitat. Its elongated body, segmented limbs, and matte, fibrous exoskeleton resemble a twig only in static form. What completes the deception is movement, or more precisely the disciplined control of movement. In a forest where predators are wired to detect motion before shape, any living creature that moves incorrectly announces itself instantly. The stick insect's success lies in understanding, through evolution rather than intention, that visibility is governed by dynamics, not outlines. To appreciate this, one must see the world as a predator does. Birds, reptiles, and small mammals do not scan the environment like humans, identifying shapes and colors in detail. Their visual systems are tuned to sudden changes, acceleration, contrast shifts, irregular motion. A perfectly camouflaged animal that moves abruptly may as well be glowing. Motion breaks illusion faster than color ever could. The stick insect's body, therefore, is not optimized merely to look like a twig, but to move like one under the influence of wind. As the breeze passes through the canopy, branches do not sway uniformly. Thinner twigs bend first, lagging slightly behind the motion of larger branches, then overshooting and settling back in irregular rhythms. The stick insect mirrors this behavior with extraordinary precision. Its slow, pendulum-like sway is not random, nor is it constant. It responds to changes in airflow, adjusting angle and timing to match the oscillation of surrounding vegetation. When the wind strengthens, the insect exaggerates its sway. When the air stills, it freezes completely, sometimes for hours, locking its joints into rigid alignment that mimics dead wood rather than living tissue. This control is not trivial. Muscles that power rapid escape in other insects are, in stick insects, repurposed for restraint. Their neuromuscular system emphasizes precision over speed, allowing for micro-adjustments that keep motion within the narrow parameters of environmental noise. The energy cost of this behavior is high. Remaining motionless for extended periods slows feeding, growth, and reproduction. Yet the trade-off is survival. In a habitat saturated with visually oriented predators, being overlooked is more valuable than being fast. Predators approach this environment with a hierarchy of attention. Motion draws the eye first, triggering orientation responses in fractions of a second. Only after motion is detected does the brain attempt to resolve shape, depth, and identity. By ensuring that its movement never exceeds the background threshold, the stick insect prevents that first step from ever occurring. To the predator, there is no signal to process, only wind-stirred clutter. The insect is not misidentified as a twig. It is never identified at all. This strategy becomes even more effective when viewed in ecological context. Stick insects are primarily nocturnal or crepuscular feeders, emerging under low-light conditions when visual acuity is reduced. During daylight hours, they remain suspended among branches, aligned with the plant's growth axis. Their bodies often match not only the thickness of surrounding twigs, but also their orientation, angling themselves upward or outward depending on how branches radiate from the trunk. Some species even bear irregular protrusions or flattened expansions that mimic leaf scars, lichen growth, or bud nodes, further disrupting any clean silhouette. Yet these physical adaptations would fail without behavioral discipline. A gust of wind may cause a real twig to oscillate chaotically, but a stick insect must decide whether to move or remain still. This decision is governed by mechanoreceptors that detect airflow and vibration through the exoskeleton. If the surrounding vegetation moves, the insect moves with it. If not, it remains locked in place, even if disturbed slightly by a passing animal or falling debris. Sudden movement in calm air is more dangerous than slow movement in wind. The insect's nervous system prioritizes stillness over comfort, allowing minor disturbances to pass without response. This approach contrasts sharply with more familiar forms of camouflage, such as color matching or pattern disruption. Those strategies rely on deceiving the eye during static observation. Stick insects operate one level deeper, manipulating the rules of attention themselves. They exploit the fact that predator perception evolved to filter noise efficiently. In a world where everything moves, the brain must ignore most motion to avoid overload. The stick insect hides inside that ignored fraction, calibrating its behavior to remain below the threshold of relevance. There is a quiet irony in this strategy. The insect's greatest defense depends on surrendering agency. It does not flee, threaten, or distract. It yields control to the environment, allowing wind and light to dictate its behavior. Evolution has shaped a creature whose survival depends on restraint rather than reaction, on patience rather than power. In this sense, the stick insect is not a master of disguise, but a master of timing. This mastery becomes most apparent during moments of danger. When a bird lands nearby, branches shift slightly under the added weight. Leaves tremble. The stick insect senses these changes and adjusts accordingly, matching the new pattern of movement without ever revealing itself. Even when touched, many species will sway gently rather than jerk away, maintaining the illusion of lifelessness. Some can even drop to the forest floor and remain motionless among leaf litter, relying on the same principles of movement suppression in a different medium. The effectiveness of this behavior is reflected in the stick insect's ecological role. As slow-moving herbivores, they exert steady but localized pressure on plant communities, trimming leaves without devastating vegetation. Their presence supports a web of predators that rely on rare detection events rather than constant pursuit. In this way, their invisibility shapes not only their own survival, but the hunting strategies and population dynamics of the ecosystem around them. Disappearance in this context is not magic. It is a finely tuned biological solution to a perceptual problem. The stick insect does not vanish because it looks like a twig. It vanishes because it behaves like part of the forest's background motion, surrendering individuality in exchange for survival. In a world governed by attention, the ultimate defense is not concealment, but irrelevance. Dawn in the tropical forest arrives without ceremony. There is no clear boundary between night and day, only a gradual dilution of darkness as humidity lifts and light filters downward through overlapping layers of leaves. The understory remains dim, a place of soft contrasts and half-resolved shapes, where depth is difficult to judge and movement often arrives before clarity. This is the hour when predators begin to test the edges of concealment, when birds shake off the stillness of roosting and small mammals resume cautious patrols through foliage. For prey, it is a dangerous interval. Vision improves just enough to detect motion, but not enough to guarantee recognition. In this uncertain light, deception does not need to be perfect. It only needs to work for a moment. Perched quietly against a tree trunk or resting among fallen leaves is the owl butterfly, wings folded, body still. In this resting posture, it resembles little more than a dead leaf, its underside patterned in muted browns and greys with subtle veins that echo plant tissue rather than living flesh. Nothing about it signals alarm or strength. It is an unremarkable object in a cluttered environment, and that is precisely the point. The butterfly's power does not reside in how it looks when calm, but in what it becomes when threatened. A predator approaches, perhaps a small bird moving low through the understory, scanning for insects disturbed by the growing light. It does not see the butterfly as a butterfly. It sees texture, shadow, and potential movement. The owl butterfly remains still, allowing the predator to close the distance. This restraint is critical. An early escape would draw attention, triggering pursuit. Instead, the butterfly waits until the threat crosses a threshold, when distance collapses and attack becomes imminent. Only then does it act. In a sudden, fluid motion, The butterfly snaps its wings open. What was once a dull, leaf-like surface transforms instantly into a bold display dominated by two large, dark circles rimmed with pale yellow and deep blue. These eye spots are not decorative. They are positioned and proportioned to resemble the forward-facing eyes of a vertebrate predator, something with depth perception, awareness, and the capacity to strike back. In the dim light of the forest floor, this transformation is abrupt and overwhelming. The predator is confronted not with prey, but with the suggestion of another hunter already watching. This is psychological warfare at its most refined. The owl butterfly does not attempt to convince the predator of a specific identity. It does not need to perfectly imitate an owl, a snake, or any single animal. Instead, it exploits a more fundamental vulnerability in predator perception: the reflexive response to eyes. Across vertebrate lineages, forward-facing eyes are associated with danger. They signal intent, focus, and agency. Even a fleeting impression of such eyes can interrupt an attack sequence long enough to alter the outcome. That interruption is measured in fractions of a second, but in ecological terms, it is everything. Predatory strikes are tightly choreographed events, relying on precise timing and motor patterns. A sudden sensory conflict, such as the unexpected appearance of a face-like pattern, forces the predator's brain to reassess the situation. Is this prey, or is it something capable of retaliation? In that brief hesitation, the owl butterfly escapes, dropping into flight or darting into cover, while the predator recalibrates. The effectiveness of this strategy lies not in fear, but in uncertainty. Intimidation does not require teeth, venom, or strength. It requires only the ability to disrupt decision-making. The owl butterfly's eye spots are tuned to the visual processing biases of its predators. Birds, in particular, are highly sensitive to eye-like stimuli. Studies of avian behavior have shown that even simple eye patterns can delay attacks or redirect aggression, especially when they appear suddenly and at close range. The butterfly's display is optimized for this moment, maximizing contrast and apparent size precisely when escape is possible. The timing of the display is as important as its appearance. If the eye spots were visible at all times, predators would learn to ignore them. Constant exposure erodes impact. Instead, the butterfly conceals its weapon until the last possible moment, ensuring that the reveal remains startling. This concealment is reinforced by the butterfly's resting posture and habitat choice. By positioning itself in low-light environments where visual information is already incomplete, it increases the likelihood that the display will be misinterpreted as something larger and more dangerous than it truly is. Physiologically, the owl butterfly supports this strategy through strong wing muscles capable of rapid opening, despite its relatively large size. These muscles are not primarily adapted for long-distance migration or sustained flight, but for explosive movement. The wings themselves are broad and rounded, enhancing the apparent size of the eye spots when displayed. The patterns are symmetrical, reinforcing the illusion of a face oriented directly toward the observer. Symmetry matters. Predators are more likely to interpret symmetrical patterns as biologically relevant, a signal that demands attention. This tactic does not guarantee safety. Some predators learn to overcome their hesitation, especially those that rely more on other senses or that have encountered similar displays before. But evolution does not require perfection. It favors strategies that improve survival odds incrementally across generations. Even a small reduction in predation pressure can shape population dynamics over time, allowing the trait to persist and refine. The ecological role of the owl butterfly extends beyond its interactions with predators. As a frugivore in its adult stage, it feeds on fermenting fruit rather than nectar, occupying a niche that reduces competition with other butterflies. This diet influences its behavior, keeping it closer to the forest floor where fallen fruit accumulates. That same zone is densely populated by predators, increasing the selective pressure for effective defense mechanisms. The eye spot display is not an isolated adaptation, but part of a broader ecological strategy that balances feeding efficiency with survival risk. There is an understated elegance to this system. The butterfly does not dominate its environment. It negotiates with it, leveraging perceptual shortcuts rather than brute force. Its wings are both camouflage and signal, concealment and confrontation, depending on context. This duality reflects a deeper truth about survival in complex ecosystems. Success often depends not on being the strongest or fastest, but on understanding how others perceive the world and exploiting the gaps in that perception. In the end, the owl butterfly's eyes are not eyes at all. They see nothing, judge nothing, and intend nothing. Yet they influence behavior, shape outcomes, and alter the flow of energy through the ecosystem. They remind us that intimidation is not a matter of violence, but of information. A well-timed illusion can be as powerful as any weapon, buying just enough time for life to continue, one narrow escape at a time. Late summer light stretches across open meadows and roadside fields, illuminating swaths of milkweed and wildflowers that sway under the weight of heat and insects alike. The air is busy with motion, wings flashing between stems, birds darting in short, purposeful bursts, and the constant hum of life converting sunlight into survival. In this exposed landscape, there is nowhere to hide for something delicate. The monarch butterfly drifts through it anyway, bright orange and black against green and sky, moving slowly, almost carelessly, as if unaware of how visible it is. For many animals, such visibility would be an invitation to death. For the monarch, it is a message. The monarch does not rely on secrecy. It does not flatten itself against bark or dissolve into shadow. Its wings are large, thin, and conspicuously colored, bordered in black and traced with veins that sharpen the contrast rather than soften it. To a human observer, the butterfly appears fragile, a paper-light organism carried by air currents it barely controls. This appearance is misleading. The monarch's true defense is not speed or strength, but chemistry, and its colors are not decoration. They are a warning broadcast openly to the ecosystem. From the moment a monarch caterpillar hatches, its fate is tied to milkweed. This plant, unpalatable to most herbivores, produces cardiac glycosides, compounds that interfere with cellular ion transport and disrupt heart function in vertebrates. For many animals, ingesting milkweed is dangerous or lethal. Monarch larvae feed on it exclusively, not because they are immune in a simplistic sense, but because they have evolved mechanisms to tolerate, sequester, and store these toxins within their own tissues. As the caterpillar grows, the chemicals accumulate, persisting through metamorphosis and into adulthood. The adult butterfly carries this chemical inheritance in every wing beat. Predators do not know this instinctively. The warning system only works because it is learned. A young bird, recently fledged and inexperienced, may spot a monarch fluttering low over a field and strike. The butterfly is easy to catch. It does not accelerate sharply, nor does it zigzag with urgency. The bird succeeds, and in that moment, the system reveals its purpose. The taste is wrong. Bitter, acrid, and accompanied by nausea or vomiting, sometimes severe enough to incapacitate the predator temporarily. The butterfly may be damaged or killed in the process, but the lesson is delivered. Learning in predators is not abstract. It is physical, immediate, and memorable. The discomfort following that first encounter is paired with a strong visual imprint. Orange wings, black veins, a slow, floating flight pattern. The predator's brain forms an association between appearance and consequence. In future encounters, that association guides behavior. The bird hesitates, then avoids. The cost of attacking something so brightly colored is no longer worth the risk. The monarch that dies teaches, and in doing so protects countless others that share its signal. This is the power of honest warning coloration, known as aposematism. It is not a bluff. It is an advertisement backed by real consequences. The monarch's colors are effective precisely because they are consistent and widespread. Across vast geographic ranges, from North America to parts of Central and South America, the same pattern repeats. Predators migrating or dispersing across regions encounter the same visual message again and again, reinforcing the lesson. A single bad experience can shape behavior for years. There is a quiet efficiency to this system. The monarch does not need to fight every predator individually. It only needs to be convincing enough once. In ecosystems where predators have long lifespans and good memory, such as birds, The protective effect multiplies rapidly. One butterfly's chemical defense becomes a population-level shield. Even predators that have never tasted a monarch may avoid it, learning indirectly by observing the reactions of others or inheriting cautious tendencies reinforced by natural selection. The irony lies in the monarch's appearance. Its wings are thin, easily torn, and vulnerable to weather. Its body offers little resistance to a beak or claw. Visually, it resembles prey that should be easy to overpower. This apparent fragility is the lie, though not in the sense of deception. The monarch does not pretend to be dangerous through false signals. It simply allows observers to underestimate it if they rely on superficial cues like softness or size. The real threat is invisible, embedded in chemistry rather than muscle. This strategy shapes the monarch's behavior in subtle ways. Its flight is not evasive. It is steady, even leisurely, conserving energy during long movements across landscapes. During migration, this becomes critical. Monarchs undertake one of the most remarkable insect migrations on the planet, traveling thousands of kilometers across generations to reach overwintering sites. Energy efficiency matters more than speed. The confidence provided by chemical defense allows monarchs to fly during daylight hours in open spaces, feeding and moving without the constant need to dart for cover. Migration also amplifies the warning system. As monarchs move en masse, their colors dominate the visual field, overwhelming predator perception. The signal becomes impossible to ignore. Predators encountering migrating monarchs are inundated with the same message repeatedly, reinforcing avoidance behavior at a continental scale. Even if some individuals are lost, the collective benefit is immense. The chemical defense itself is not static. The concentration of toxins in a monarch varies depending on the milkweed species consumed during the larval stage. Some milkweeds contain higher levels of cardiac glycosides, making the resulting butterflies more toxic. This variation introduces nuance into the system. Predators may occasionally encounter monarchs that are less potent, weakening the association slightly. Yet the overall pattern remains effective because the risk of encountering a highly toxic individual persists. From a predator's perspective, uncertainty favors caution. This dynamic has influenced other species as well. Some butterflies that lack chemical defenses mimic the monarch's coloration, gaining protection without paying the cost of toxicity. This resemblance only works because the monarch's warning is honest and well established. The mimic benefits from the reputation built by the model. However, if mimics become too common, predators may begin to test the signal again, eroding its reliability. The monarch's chemical defense anchors the system, maintaining its credibility. Within the broader ecosystem, the monarch occupies a paradoxical role. As a larva, it consumes a plant that few others can, shaping milkweed populations and influencing plant community structure. As an adult, it serves as prey that teaches predators restraint. Its presence alters hunting strategies, encouraging predators to refine discrimination rather than indiscriminate attack. In this way, the monarch contributes to a more nuanced and stable ecological network. The boldness of the monarch's colors is often celebrated for its beauty, but beauty is incidental. The pattern exists because it works. It communicates clearly in varied light conditions, from bright midday sun to overcast skies. The black veins break up the orange surface, enhancing visibility at distance and ensuring recognition even when the wings are partially obscured. The message is not subtle. It does not need to be. The monarch's survival strategy reminds us that strength in nature is not always expressed through aggression or armor. Sometimes it is expressed through openness, through the willingness to be seen and remembered. The monarch survives not by hiding its vulnerability, but by pairing that vulnerability with a cost that predators cannot afford to ignore. What looks like a bluff is, in fact, a contract enforced by chemistry and memory. In the end, the monarch butterfly drifts across the landscape as both warning and lesson. Its wings carry more than color. They carry history, learned behavior, and the accumulated consequences of countless encounters between predator and prey. Each flutter is a declaration that fragility and defense are not opposites, and that survival can hinge on being unmistakably, unapologetically visible. The forest edge is a place of contradiction. Light pours in from above, but it does not arrive evenly. Sunlight fractures as it passes through overlapping leaves, breaking into moving patches that drift across bark, soil, and low vegetation. Brightness and shadow trade places constantly, creating a visual field that never settles. In this restless mosaic, sharp outlines dissolve and reform from moment to moment. For animals that hunt by sight, this environment is both rich and treacherous. It offers visibility, but not clarity. And it is here, in this unstable light, that the leopard lacewing lives. At first encounter, the leopard lacewing appears defenseless. Its wings are pale, almost translucent, patterned with soft browns, creams, and delicate markings that resemble brushstrokes rather than armor. Nothing about it suggests urgency or danger. Its flight is gentle, unhurried, more like drifting than escaping. To human eyes, it is decorative, an insect that seems designed to be admired rather than feared. This perception is precisely what makes it difficult to see. The lacewing's survival does not depend on invisibility in the traditional sense. It does not vanish into monochrome backgrounds or mimic a single object with precision. Instead, it exploits a more subtle weakness in visual perception: the difficulty of resolving shape when contrast is fragmented. In dappled light, where brightness shifts across surfaces in irregular patterns, contrast can obscure rather than reveal. The leopard lacewing's wing pattern is tuned to this phenomenon with remarkable accuracy. Predators do not perceive the world as a collection of static images. Their visual systems are built to detect edges, continuity, and movement, assembling these cues into recognizable forms. A clear silhouette is easy to process. A disrupted outline is not. The lacewing's wings are marked with irregular spots and bands that interrupt the continuity of its body shape. These markings do not match any one background element. Instead, they echo the randomness of light itself, blending with the shifting shadows cast by leaves overhead. As the insect rests on foliage or tree bark, its wings align with the plane of the surface, flattening its profile. The patterning breaks the wing surface into multiple visual fragments, each catching or reflecting light differently. In bright patches, pale areas dominate. In shadow, darker markings take precedence. The result is a body that refuses to resolve into a single object. To a predator scanning the scene, the lacewing is not recognized as prey. It is mistaken for part of the background's visual noise. This strategy becomes even more effective when the insect moves. Unlike rapid directional flight that would draw attention, the leopard lacewing's motion is slow and irregular. It drifts between light and shadow, allowing its pattern to recalibrate continuously against the environment. Each wing beat subtly changes how light interacts with its markings, preventing the formation of a stable visual target. Motion, which often betrays camouflage, here reinforces it by keeping the insect synchronized with the shifting light field. The effectiveness of this approach lies in understanding how contrast operates in natural environments. High contrast does not always increase visibility. In complex lighting, strong contrasts can fracture perception, especially when they align with environmental patterns. The lacewing spots and streaks are not symmetrical or evenly spaced. They avoid forming recognizable motifs that a predator could learn to identify. Instead, they remain just irregular enough to resist categorization. This is not accidental beauty. It is an evolved solution to a perceptual problem. The lacewing's patterning has been shaped by generations of predation pressure in environments where light is unstable. Individuals whose markings better disrupted their outline survived more often, reproducing and refining the effect over time. What humans interpret as elegance or delicacy is, in reality, the visible trace of selection acting on visual confusion. The irony is that such patterning often attracts human attention precisely because it stands out in controlled settings. Against a uniform background or in still air, the lacewing appears striking. But nature does not provide neutral backdrops. In the wild, there is no blank canvas. There is only layered complexity, and the lacewing's beauty is calibrated for that complexity, not for observation. Predators navigating these environments face constant cognitive load. Their brains must filter vast amounts of visual information to isolate relevant targets. In this context, efficiency matters more than thoroughness. A predator that hesitates too long wastes energy and risks missing other opportunities. The lacewing exploits this limitation. By failing to resolve quickly into prey, it is discarded from attention, allowing the predator to move on. This mechanism differs fundamentally from warning coloration or mimicry. The lacewing does not announce danger, nor does it impersonate something else. It simply avoids becoming a coherent object. This is a quieter strategy, one that does not rely on memory or learning in predators. Each encounter begins fresh, forcing the predator to solve the same visual puzzle again. Often, it chooses not to. The lacewing's soft appearance also influences human perception in a revealing way. We tend to associate softness with vulnerability and beauty with harmlessness. In doing so, we mirror the same cognitive shortcuts that predators use. The lacewing demonstrates that such shortcuts can be misleading. Survival does not always announce itself through hardness or aggression. Sometimes it hides behind aesthetics. Within the ecosystem, this strategy allows the leopard lacewing to occupy exposed niches without constant flight. It can feed, rest, and reproduce in areas where total concealment is impossible. By reducing the frequency of detection rather than preventing it entirely, the lacewing balances energy expenditure with risk. It does not need to be perfect. It only needs to be overlooked often enough. This balance influences its ecological role. Lacewings are typically predators in their larval stages, feeding on aphids and other small insects, contributing to population control within plant communities. The adult's ability to survive in open, light-filled environments ensures the continuation of this role. Its camouflage supports not just individual survival, but broader ecological stability by maintaining predator populations that regulate herbivorous insects. There is a lesson embedded in this design. In nature, visibility is not a binary state. An organism is not simply seen or unseen. It exists along a spectrum of detectability shaped by context, behavior, and perception. The leopard lacewing positions itself at a point on that spectrum where recognition fails. It is visible in fragments, but invisible as a whole. When light shifts, and the insect finally lifts into the air, its wings catch the sun briefly, flashing patterns that seem almost ornamental. Then it settles again, dissolving back into the moving texture of leaves and shadow. The moment passes, and the forest returns to its layered complexity. Unchanged, except for the quiet persistence of a strategy that proves again and again that prettiness can be more than ornament. It can be armor, not in hardness, but in confusion. In the leopard lacewing, survival wears a gentle face. Its wings do not threaten or warn. They persuade the eye to look elsewhere. In a world governed by perception, that persuasion is enough. The forest floor of Madagascar is dense with soundless tension. Leaf litter lies thick and damp, layered over roots and decaying wood, absorbing light and muffling movement. In this low, enclosed world, vision is unreliable. Shadows overlap, humidity blurs edges, and obstacles crowd every direction. Here, survival depends less on what can be seen and more on what can be inferred. Size, intent, and danger are often guessed rather than confirmed. In this environment, sound becomes a powerful shortcut for decision-making, and few insects wield it as deliberately as the Madagascar cockroach. At rest, the cockroach is unimpressive. Its body is broad and flattened, colored in dark browns that blend easily with soil and bark. It does not possess wings for flight, nor does it move with urgency unless disturbed. To an observer unfamiliar with its behavior, it appears slow, even clumsy. A creature defined more by persistence than finesse. Yet this assessment collapses the moment the cockroach is threatened. When danger closes in, the insect does not flee silently. It announces itself with a sudden explosive hiss that reverberates through the tight spaces it inhabits, transforming perception in an instant. The hiss is not produced vocally. Cockroaches lack vocal cords or lungs. Instead, the sound is generated by forcefully expelling air through specialized spiracles along the abdomen. This rapid release creates a sharp, broadband noise, rich in low frequencies that travel efficiently through cluttered environments. In the narrow corridors beneath logs and stones, the hiss seems larger than the insect itself, filling the space and reflecting unpredictably off surfaces. For predators accustomed to associating such sounds with vertebrates capable of biting back, the effect is disorienting. This sound does not communicate information in the way a bird call might. It tells no story of location or identity. Its purpose is simpler and more immediate. It signals escalation. The suddenness of the hiss interrupts the predator's approach, forcing a pause. In that pause, the predator must reassess. Is this prey, or something capable of inflicting harm? In environments where encounters are close and escape routes limited, hesitation can mean the difference between a successful strike and injury. The cockroach exploits that hesitation expertly. Sound alone, however, is only part of the message. The hiss is paired with posture. When threatened, the Madagascar cockroach raises its body, lifting the front segment of its thorax and angling its head upward. This posture increases apparent size, especially when viewed from low angles in confined spaces. The cockroach may also brace itself against the substrate, legs splayed slightly outward, creating a stable base that suggests readiness rather than panic. To a predator, this combination of sound and stance resembles a defensive response rather than a retreat, further complicating the decision to attack. Among their own kind, these behaviors take on additional meaning. Madagascar cockroaches are not solitary insects. They live in loose aggregations, often competing for shelter, food, and access to mates. In these interactions, the hiss becomes a tool for negotiation and dominance rather than defense. Males, in particular, engage in ritualized contests that rely on intimidation rather than injury. When two males encounter one another in a contested space, they face off, bodies angled, antennae probing. Shoving begins slowly, each insect testing the other's resistance. As tension escalates, hissing intensifies. The sound is sustained rather than explosive, signaling persistence rather than surprise. The cockroaches push chest to chest, attempting to force the opponent backward. These contests rarely result in physical harm. Instead, they resolve through assessment. Which individual produces the stronger, more confident display? Which holds ground longer? The hiss, amplified by posture and pressure, conveys information about size, stamina, and determination without the need for combat that could weaken both parties. This use of sound as intimidation reflects the ecological realities of their habitat. In tight spaces, physical fights are costly. Injury can be fatal when escape is limited and pathogens are abundant. Evolution favors strategies that settle disputes quickly and with minimal damage. The Madagascar cockroach's hiss serves this purpose, functioning as an honest signal of intent rather than strength. It does not guarantee victory, but it reduces uncertainty, allowing conflicts to end before they escalate. Predators experience a similar calculation. Many of the animals that hunt cockroaches rely on ambush tactics, striking quickly in confined spaces. When a hiss erupts unexpectedly, it disrupts that sequence. The predator's sensory priorities shift from attack to interpretation. The sound suggests a larger organism, possibly one capable of biting, stinging, or otherwise resisting. In the darkness beneath logs or within burrows, where visibility is poor, predators often err on the side of caution. The cockroach does not need to be dangerous. It only needs to suggest danger convincingly. This strategy highlights an important principle in ecology. Perception shapes reality. The hiss does not physically alter the cockroach's vulnerability, but it alters how that vulnerability is perceived. In doing so, it changes outcomes. The cockroach survives not because it overpowers its enemies, but because it manipulates their expectations. This manipulation is rooted in the sensory biases of predators, many of which associate loud, sudden sounds with animals larger than themselves, or with defensive capabilities that pose risk. The effectiveness of the hiss is also context-dependent. In open environments, where predators can see clearly and assess size accurately, the sound loses much of its power. But the Madagascar cockroach does not inhabit open spaces. It thrives in cluttered, enclosed environments where sound carries farther than sight. Its behavior is calibrated to these conditions, reinforcing the idea that adaptations cannot be understood in isolation from habitat. Even the cockroach's physical build supports this strategy. Its robust exoskeleton provides some protection against crushing, allowing it to withstand brief contact during intimidation encounters. Its low center of gravity makes it difficult to flip or dislodge. When combined with a loud acoustic display, these traits create a composite defense that is greater than the sum of its parts. The hiss buys time. The posture discourages follow-through. The body absorbs what contact occurs. There is an understated sophistication to this system. To human ears, the hiss may sound crude or even comical, an exaggerated noise from an unlikely source. But within the ecosystem, it is finely tuned communication, shaped by countless interactions between predator and prey, rival and rival. It reflects an understanding, encoded by evolution, that sound can carry meaning beyond words, that it can compress information about risk into a single moment. The Madagascar cockroach reminds us that survival is not always silent. While many animals rely on stillness or concealment, others survive by breaking the quiet at precisely the right time. In doing so, they rewrite the narrative of the encounter. The predator expects prey. Instead, it encounters resistance, ambiguity, and the possibility of consequence. As the hiss fades and the forest floor settles back into its damp quiet, the cockroach remains where it is, posture relaxed once more, having altered the course of events without ever needing to flee. The sound lingers in memory longer than it does in air, shaping future decisions for those that heard it. In that sense, the hiss is not just noise. It is a story told in an instant, one that says this space is occupied, this body is not passive, and this encounter may not be worth the risk. Early morning light spreads across stone walls, tree trunks, and patches of bare ground where warmth arrives before shade retreats. These are transitional spaces, neither deep forest nor open field, where temperature shifts quickly and visibility is sharp. Insects that occupy such places live under constant scrutiny. There is little cover, few shadows to retreat into, and predators patrol with confidence, knowing that anything exposed is likely vulnerable. Against this stark backdrop, firebugs gather openly, their bodies glowing red and black like living embers scattered across the surface of the world. They make no attempt to hide. They do not rush for cover when footsteps pass nearby. Instead, they remain where they are, relying on a signal older than memory. Firebugs are not fast. They are not armored. Their bodies are soft, their movements measured, and their escape options limited. Yet they persist in some of the most visually unforgiving environments insects can occupy. Their survival depends on a single principle: the predator must decide not to attack. Everything about the firebug's appearance and behavior is tuned to force that decision to happen early, before curiosity becomes commitment. The colors are the first and most obvious element of the strategy. Bright red contrasted with deep black forms a pattern that is immediately legible in natural environments. Red wavelengths stand out strongly against soil, bark, and stone, especially in daylight. This is not accidental contrast. It is the visual language of aposematism, a biological warning system in which conspicuous coloration advertises that an organism is unpalatable, toxic, or otherwise costly to consume. The message is simple, but it only works if predators learn to read it. Predators are not born understanding warning colors. They acquire that knowledge through experience, often unpleasant experience. A bird encountering a firebug for the first time may strike, driven by instinct and hunger. The insect is easy to catch. It does not flee dramatically or fight back with force. But the moment of consumption delivers the lesson. Firebugs feed on plants that contain defensive chemicals, and they incorporate these compounds into their own bodies. When bitten or swallowed, they release substances that taste bitter and irritating, sometimes triggering nausea or discomfort. The predator survives, but the encounter is not forgotten. Learning in predators is shaped by consequence. The discomfort does not need to be extreme. It needs only to be consistent and associated clearly with a visual cue. The firebug's colors provide that cue. Red and black become linked with negative outcome, and once that association forms, it alters future behavior. The next time a predator sees that pattern, the decision happens almost instantly. Avoidance replaces attack. This timing is critical. Aposematism works not by defeating predators, but by preempting action. The goal is to trigger recognition before the predator commits to a strike. Once an attack is underway, the cost to the insect is already high. Firebugs, like many warning-colored species, accept that some individuals will be lost in the learning process. Evolution does not protect individuals. It protects strategies that persist across generations. Firebugs amplify this strategy through behavior. They often gather in visible clusters, especially during cooler periods when basking in sunlight helps regulate body temperature. These aggregations make the warning signal impossible to miss. A single insect might be tested. A group broadcasting the same message simultaneously reinforces the lesson. To a predator, the abundance of red and black bodies suggests that the risk is not isolated. The pattern is widespread and therefore reliable. This reliability is the foundation of aposematism. Warning colors only work if they are honest. If predators repeatedly encounter brightly colored prey that is harmless, the signal loses value. Firebugs maintain honesty by backing their appearance with chemical defense. The cost of sampling remains high enough to discourage repeated testing. Over time, predators evolve an inherited bias toward caution when encountering such patterns, reinforcing avoidance even before individual learning occurs. The firebug strategy also reveals something subtle about predator psychology. Predators do not make decisions solely based on hunger. They balance reward against risk, constantly updating that balance as conditions change. A small, bitter meal is rarely worth the potential cost, especially when other prey options exist. Firebugs exploit this calculus. They do not need to be deadly. They need only to be inconvenient enough that predators choose differently. The environment plays a crucial role in this exchange. Firebugs are most visible when predators are also most active. Daylight hunting relies heavily on vision, making color-based signals particularly effective. In low light or darkness, aposematism loses power, and firebugs adjust behavior accordingly, becoming less active or seeking shelter. Their warning is timed to the sensory strengths of their enemies. There is also a social dimension to predator learning. Birds and other visual predators often observe one another. A juvenile bird may learn avoidance not only from personal experience, but from watching another individual reject or regurgitate a firebug. In this way, the lesson spreads faster than direct contact alone would allow. The firebug's colors become part of a shared ecological memory. Within the ecosystem, this dynamic shapes more than just predator behavior. Firebugs feed on fallen seeds and plant material, contributing to nutrient cycling and plant population control. Their presence influences where predators forage and how long they remain in certain areas. Warning-colored prey create pockets of reduced predation pressure, altering the flow of energy through the food web. A simple color pattern can have cascading effects. The firebug's apparent boldness often misleads human observers. Bright colors are frequently associated with aggression or danger in our own cultural frameworks, but in biological terms, they are defensive. The firebug does not threaten. It informs. Its strategy depends on the predator's ability to interpret information and act accordingly. In this sense, the insect is engaged in constant communication with its environment. This communication must remain consistent across generations. Young firebugs emerge already bearing the same warning pattern, inheriting the signal without needing to earn it individually. They benefit immediately from the hard-earned lessons of their ancestors. Predators encountering them apply existing rules rather than starting from scratch. This continuity is what allows aposematism to function as a stable strategy over evolutionary time. There is an elegance in how little force is required. No chase, no ambush, no struggle. The conflict is resolved before it begins. The predator sees, remembers, and decides. The firebug survives because the battle never happens. This approach contrasts sharply with strategies based on concealment or escape. Those require constant vigilance and rapid response. Aposematism shifts the burden onto the predator, forcing it to do the work of avoidance. The insect remains exposed, but protected by reputation rather than invisibility. In the end, the firebug's survival hinges on a single moment of recognition. A flash of red against stone, a memory of bitterness, a decision made in a fraction of a second. The predator turns away, and life continues uninterrupted. The true trick of aposmatism is not the color itself, but the timing of understanding. By ensuring that predators know what they are seeing before they attack, firebugs transform vulnerability into safety. They do not rely on speed, strength, or stealth. They rely on education. In a world shaped by experience, teaching the enemy can be the most effective defense of all. Morning heat settles quickly over open ground. Sunlight reflects off dry soil, stones, and low vegetation, creating an environment with little shelter and few visual breaks. This is not a place that rewards subtlety. Anything that lives here is exposed, visible from multiple angles, and constantly scanned by predators moving above and along the ground. Insects that survive in such settings do not have the luxury of blending in. Instead, they must communicate clearly and decisively, sending messages that travel faster than pursuit. Against this stark backdrop, the red cotton bug gathers in clusters that seem almost reckless in their visibility, bodies pressed close together, black and crimson patterns flashing like warning flags in the sun. Individually, a red cotton bug is unremarkable in size or strength. Its body is soft compared to heavily armored insects, its movements deliberate rather than fast. It cannot leap away from danger or take to the air in an instant. Yet when dozens, sometimes hundreds, assemble on exposed stems or along the ground, they form a signal that is impossible to ignore. The bright red markings contrast sharply with dark segments of the body, creating a visual code that predators across the ecosystem have learned to interpret with caution. This is not camouflage. It is a declaration. The power of that declaration lies not only in color, but in repetition. A single insect displaying warning colors may still be tested by an inexperienced predator, but a group broadcasting the same signal simultaneously changes the calculus entirely. The red cotton bug lives and feeds in aggregations, often on host plants where seeds and sap are abundant. These clusters are not accidental. They are the amplification of a message, one individual reinforcing the next until the warning becomes unmistakable. Predators process risk through experience. When a bird or lizard encounters a brightly colored insect and suffers the consequences, that experience reshapes future behavior. But learning takes time, and not every predator survives its first mistake. Group signaling accelerates this process. When multiple insects share the same warning pattern and appear together, the likelihood that a predator encounters, tastes, or observes a negative outcome increases dramatically. One bad experience can be generalized across an entire visual category. The predator does not need to test each individual. The group has taught the lesson collectively. The red cotton bug's coloration is not an empty threat. It feeds on plants that contain defensive compounds, particularly seeds rich in secondary chemicals that deter herbivores. These compounds are sequestered within the insect's body, making it distasteful or mildly toxic to predators. The effect is rarely lethal, but it is memorable. A predator that bites down on a red cotton bug encounters bitterness, irritation, or digestive discomfort that outweighs the nutritional reward. The insect may not survive that encounter, but the signal does. Its sacrifice reinforces the warning for all others that look the same. Clustering enhances this effect by making the cost of curiosity visible. A predator approaching a group does not see a single meal. It sees abundance. That abundance invites testing, but it also raises the stakes. If the first bite goes badly, the predator must confront the realization that every similar-looking insect nearby carries the same risk. The red cotton bug's survival strategy does not rely on individual escape, but on shaping predator behavior at the population level. There is an efficiency to this approach. Living in groups reduces the need for constant vigilance. While solitary insects must rely on early detection and rapid response, clustered insects share the burden of signaling danger. The warning colors do the work continuously, without movement or sound. Energy that might otherwise be spent on fleeing or hiding can be redirected toward feeding and reproduction. In harsh, exposed environments, this efficiency matters. The visual impact of clustering, also exploits limitations in predator cognition. Predators are not perfect statisticians. They rely on heuristics, mental shortcuts that simplify decision-making in complex environments. One such shortcut is avoidance of highly conspicuous, repetitive signals associated with negative outcomes. When a predator encounters a dense cluster of red cotton bugs, the signal crosses a threshold where individual variation becomes irrelevant. The group is perceived as a single entity, uniformly risky. Even intelligent predators capable of learning exceptions are often unwilling to invest the time or energy required to test that assumption again. This hesitation is the key. Survival does not require absolute safety. It requires enough doubt to prevent attack often enough. The red cotton bug strategy is built around this principle. By making itself obvious, and by doing so collectively, it transforms visibility from a liability into a shield. The clustering behavior has additional ecological consequences. Groups are more easily located by predators, but they are also more easily avoided. This dynamic shapes predator movement patterns, steering them away from certain plants or areas where warning signals dominate. Over time, this can influence feeding routes and habitat use, subtly altering the structure of the ecosystem. The insects, by existing together, exert influence disproportionate to their size. Within the group, the benefits extend beyond defense. Aggregations can help regulate body temperature in exposed environments, with individuals buffering one another against extreme heat through shared shading and reduced surface exposure. Chemical signals released by one insect can spread quickly through the group, coordinating movement or reinforcing cohesion. What appears to be a simple cluster is, in fact, a network of interactions that enhance survival on multiple levels. There is also a social dimension to the warning system. Young insects emerging into an environment dominated by predators immediately inherit the group's protection. They do not need to survive an initial period of vulnerability alone. By joining the cluster, they benefit from a signal already established in the minds of predators. This continuity ensures that the warning remains consistent across generations, maintaining its effectiveness over time. To human observers, such gatherings can seem almost decorative, like living patterns arranged deliberately for display. The contrast is striking, the symmetry pleasing. But this aesthetic response masks the underlying function. The red cotton bug's beauty is utilitarian. Its colors are not chosen for harmony, but for memorability. They are designed to lodge in the brain of a predator and stay there. In ecosystems where learning shapes survival, memory is a weapon. The red cotton bug wields memory collectively. Each individual contributes to a shared narrative that predators carry forward. This narrative says that red and black together mean trouble, that abundance does not equal opportunity, and that some prey are not worth the risk. This strategy mirrors a broader truth in nature. Survival is often communal. Even species that do not cooperate in the traditional sense can benefit from shared signals and shared consequences. The red cotton bug does not coordinate its defense consciously. It simply lives in a way that aligns individual survival with group messaging. The result is a system where the group protects the individual and the individual reinforces the group. As the day warms and predators adjust their activity, the cluster remains in place, unmoving and unapologetic. It does not scatter or retreat. It persists, broadcasting its presence openly. In doing so, it reshapes the decisions of those around it, turning caution into avoidance and curiosity into restraint. The red cotton bug teaches a lesson that echoes across ecosystems. Visibility, when paired with honesty and repetition, can be a powerful defense. A single warning may be ignored. A chorus is harder to dismiss. Through clustering and bold patterning, these insects demonstrate that survival can be achieved not by disappearing, but by speaking loudly together, until even the smartest predators decide that listening is wiser than testing. Morning stretches slowly across the grassland, dew still clinging to stems and seed heads as sunlight angles low and sharp. This is an exposed world, shaped by wind and open sky rather than canopy and shadow. Here, movement is easily seen. Silhouettes stand out against the horizon, and survival often favors speed or armor. Yet suspended between grasses, nearly invisible until the light strikes it just right, hangs the web of the wasp spider. At its center rests the spider itself, legs splayed symmetrically, body striped in bold bands of yellow and black that echo a familiar warning. In a landscape where insects learn quickly what colors mean danger, the wasp spider advertises a threat it does not fully possess, and in doing so, gains time to let a different weapon work. The wasp spider does not hunt through pursuit. It does not chase, pounce, or overpower prey through strength alone. Its power lies in anticipation. The web, stretched carefully between stems, is both extension and amplification of the spider's body. Every strand is placed with intent, tension calibrated so that vibrations carry information with remarkable precision. To an insect flying low through the grass, the web is nearly invisible, its silk fine enough to evade detection until contact is already made. By the time the prey registers resistance, the encounter is no longer a contest. It is a conclusion. The spider's coloration plays a critical role long before that conclusion is reached. Yellow and black stripes are among the most widely recognized warning patterns in nature. They are associated with stinging insects capable of inflicting immediate pain, with venom delivered actively and decisively. Many predators learn early to avoid such patterns, often through costly mistakes. The wasp spider's body echoes this code with striking clarity. Its abdomen is boldly banded, high contrast against the green and brown tones of the grassland. To a predator scanning from above or moving along the ground, the spider resembles something better left alone. This resemblance is not accidental, but it is also not complete. The spider does possess venom, but it is delivered through fangs, not a sting, and it is primarily effective against insects rather than large vertebrates. Its bite is not a weapon of defense so much as a tool for subduing prey already caught. Yet predators do not need to know these details. They respond to patterns, not mechanisms. The stripes trigger avoidance before curiosity can escalate into investigation. In this way, the wasp spider operates as a kind of perceptual liar. It borrows the reputation of more dangerous animals without fully matching their capabilities. This does not require perfect mimicry. It requires only enough similarity to activate caution. Evolution favors such shortcuts because predators, like all animals, operate under time constraints. Hesitation costs energy. A predator that pauses to investigate every ambiguous signal will miss opportunities elsewhere. When faced with a familiar warning pattern, avoidance is often the most efficient choice. The spider reinforces this impression through behavior. It often positions itself prominently at the center of its web, rather than hiding at the edges as many spiders do. This visibility seems counterintuitive until the logic becomes clear. A hidden spider must rely entirely on concealment. A visible one can shape perception. By placing its striped body in open view, the wasp spider ensures that predators notice it quickly and ideally decide to look elsewhere. Yet the true genius of the strategy lies in how this false warning pairs with the real trap. The web is not merely a passive structure. It is tuned to the spider's sensory world. Specialized hairs on the spider's legs detect vibrations with extraordinary sensitivity, allowing it to distinguish between struggling prey, falling debris, and the cautious probing of potential predators. When an insect strikes the web, the pattern of vibration reveals size, location, and level of entanglement almost instantly. The spider responds with precision, moving only when success is assured. The prey, meanwhile, experiences the web as sudden confinement. Wings beat against silk that does not break. Legs tangle in strands that cling and tighten with each movement. The more the insect struggles, the deeper it becomes ensnared. This is the true sting of the wasp spider, delivered not through a single puncture, but through physics and patience. The spider approaches calmly, wrapping the prey in additional silk before administering venom that immobilizes and begins the process of external digestion. This division of labor between signal and weapon is central to the wasp spider's success. The stripes deter threats the spider cannot easily fight. The web captures prey the spider does not need to chase. Together, they create a system that minimizes risk while maximizing efficiency. The spider expends little energy on pursuit or defense, relying instead on design and placement. The web itself also plays a role in deterrence. Many wasp spider webs include a prominent zigzag structure known as a stabilimentum, a band of thicker silk that reflects ultraviolet light. To insects, this may appear as a visual signal, possibly attracting prey by mimicking floral cues or breaking up the outline of the web. To larger animals, it may serve as a warning, making the web visible enough to avoid accidental destruction. The stabilimentum adds another layer of ambiguity, another element that influences perception without revealing intent. Predators that specialize in eating spiders face a complex decision when encountering a wasp spider. The coloration suggests danger. The web presents an obstacle that could entangle limbs or reduce mobility. Even if the predator could overpower the spider, the cost may outweigh the reward. Many predators simply bypass the encounter entirely, leaving the spider undisturbed to continue its work. This avoidance has broader ecological implications. By occupying open grasslands and edge habitats, wasp spiders exert pressure on insect populations that move through these spaces. They capture pollinators, herbivores, and other arthropods, influencing the flow of energy between plants and insects. Their presence shapes the behavior of prey species, encouraging higher flight paths or altered movement patterns that ripple through the ecosystem. The spider's life cycle reinforces this strategy. Juveniles begin small, building modest webs and relying more heavily on concealment. As they grow, their stripes become more pronounced, their webs larger and more complex. The warning signal strengthens as the spider's reliance on the web increases. This alignment ensures that the spider is most visible when it is most capable of benefiting from deterrence. There is an understated irony in this arrangement. The wasp spider looks like an active threat, yet it is fundamentally passive. It does not patrol territory or pursue intruders. It waits. Its danger is conditional, triggered only when something blunders into its trap. The stripes suggest aggression, but the reality is restraint. The spider survives by letting others make mistakes. This strategy challenges common assumptions about deception in nature. The wasp spider is not a perfect mimic, nor is it harmless. It occupies a middle ground where suggestion is enough. Its pattern does not need to convince predators that it is a wasp. It needs only to remind them that wasps exist and that the consequences of misjudgment can be painful. In this way, the spider's stripes are less about lying and more about leveraging shared experience. Predators carry memories of stings, of sudden pain delivered by flying insects that looked similar enough to matter. The wasp spider taps into those memories, redirecting caution toward itself. The web then ensures that the spider's own interactions with prey are swift and decisive. As the sun climbs higher and the grassland fills with movement, insects cross invisible boundaries, and some never make it through. The wasp spider remains suspended, legs steady, stripes bright against the silk. It does not chase, threaten, or flee. It simply waits, letting perception and physics do the work. In a world where survival often rewards speed and force, the wasp spider proves that suggestion and patience can be just as lethal. Late afternoon settles over the forest edge with deceptive calm. Air appears empty, open, passable. A corridor through which insects move freely in search of nectar, mates, or territory. Sunlight pours through gaps in the canopy, illuminating nothing but drifting pollen and the occasional floating seed. To the casual observer, this space is vacant, a volume without structure. Yet stretched across this apparent emptiness is architecture so precise and resilient that it reshapes the rules of movement itself. The golden Silk Orb-weaver has turned air into boundary, and what looks like freedom is in fact a wall. The web of the golden Silk Orb-weaver does not announce itself loudly. Its threads catch the light only at certain angles, glowing faintly gold before vanishing again as the sun shifts. Most of the time, it remains unseen, suspended between trunks and branches like a mathematical idea rather than a physical object. Insects approach at speed, trusting the absence of visual cues until contact arrives suddenly and without warning. The collision is not violent, but it is decisive. Flight becomes resistance. Momentum collapses into vibration. The lie of empty space is exposed. this deception is not about tricking the eye alone. It is about exploiting assumptions built into the behavior of flying insects. Open air is typically safe. Obstacles are usually visible or predictable, such as leaves, stems, or bark. The orb-weaver's web violates this expectation by occupying space without announcing its presence. It exists at the edge of perception, thin enough to escape detection, yet strong enough to impose control. This balance is the result of extraordinary material science, refined by evolution long before humans began to study engineering. Golden silk is among the strongest biological materials known, rivaling steel in tensile strength while remaining flexible and lightweight. Each thread is composed of protein chains arranged in a structure that allows both elasticity and durability. When struck by prey, the silk stretches rather than snaps, absorbing kinetic energy and preventing escape. This elasticity is critical. A rigid structure would fail under impact. A flexible one adapts, redistributing force across the web's geometry. That geometry is not arbitrary. The orb-weaver constructs its web with deliberate spacing and tension, creating a radial framework that supports a spiral capture thread. The radial lines bear the load, anchoring the web to its surroundings, while the spiral threads retain just enough stickiness to entangle prey without immobilizing the spider itself. Each intersection is a node of information. Vibrations travel along these lines with remarkable clarity, allowing the spider to locate struggling prey precisely, even when the web spans several body lengths in diameter. Placement is as important as material. The golden silk orb-weaver chooses locations where insect traffic is predictable. Forest edges, clearings, and paths between vegetation act as aerial corridors, channels where flying insects concentrate their movement. By positioning the web across these routes, the spider maximizes capture probability while minimizing effort. The web is often built at heights that intercept insects flying at cruising altitude, not those hugging the ground or skimming canopy tops. This strategic positioning transforms open air into controlled territory. The web's color contributes subtly to its effectiveness. The golden hue may reflect certain wavelengths of light that blend with background foliage or sunlight, reducing contrast. To insects, whose vision often extends into ultraviolet ranges, the silk may appear differently than it does to humans. Some researchers suggest that the coloration may even attract certain prey by mimicking floral signals, though this remains an area of active study. What is clear is that the web's visibility is calibrated carefully. Too visible, and prey avoided. Too invisible, and structural integrity suffers, because the spider risks damaging its own creation. Once prey is captured, the web becomes more than a trap. It is a communication system. Vibrations carry information about prey size, struggle intensity, and even species, allowing the spider to decide whether to approach immediately or wait. Small prey may be wrapped and stored. Large prey may be assessed cautiously, with the spider testing the vibrations before committing. This decision-making reduces risk, preventing injury from prey that might be capable of biting or stinging back. The spider itself often waits at the center or at a retreat along the web's edge, connected by a signal thread. Its body posture remains relaxed, conserving energy. The web does the work continuously day and night, regardless of the spider's state. This passive hunting strategy is extraordinarily efficient. Energy expenditure is front-loaded during web construction, after which the spider benefits from repeated captures without further investment. Predators encountering the web face their own miscalculations. Birds flying through the forest edge may brush against silk strands, disrupting the structure or becoming momentarily entangled. While the web is not designed to capture large animals, the surprise of resistance in what appeared to be empty air can startle predators, encouraging avoidance. Over time, birds may learn to recognize certain visual cues associated with webs, adjusting flight paths accordingly. Even so, the web often persists long enough to capture numerous insects before requiring repair. The orb-weaver's reliance on web architecture shapes its entire life history. Growth is paced by feeding success, which depends on web placement and integrity. Weather events such as wind and rain pose constant challenges, tearing silk and forcing reconstruction. Yet the cost of rebuilding is outweighed by the benefits. Silk proteins can be recycled. The spider consumes damaged web material, reclaiming amino acids and reducing waste. This closed-loop system allows repeated construction without depleting resources excessively. Ecologically, the golden silk orb-weaver plays a significant role in regulating insect populations. By capturing flying insects, including pollinators and herbivores, it influences plant reproduction and herbivory rates. Its presence alters movement patterns, creating invisible barriers that shape how insects traverse space. These effects ripple outward, affecting predators that rely on flying insects and plants that depend on them. The web, though ephemeral, leaves lasting ecological impressions. The concept of invisible architecture extends beyond the physical structure. The web redefines the meaning of space within the ecosystem. It introduces boundaries that are not marked by solid objects, but by function. Air is no longer neutral. It is partitioned, claimed, and controlled. For the insects that encounter it, the realization arrives too late. For the spider, it is the foundation of survival. There is a subtle irony in this system. The spider does not deceive by pretending to be something else. It deceives by allowing nothingness to masquerade as freedom. The lie is not visual mimicry or false warning, but absence itself. Empty space is trusted implicitly, and the orb-weaver exploits that trust. As evening approaches and light fades, the web becomes even harder to see. Yet it remains taut and patient, continuing its work while the forest shifts around it. Insects still fly, air still appears open, and the golden silk orb-weaver waits, suspended at the center of a structure that proves again and again that what we cannot see can still define our limits. Dusk arrives softly in temperate meadows and gardens, blurring the boundary between day and night. Flowers that bloomed for the sun still hold warmth in their petals, releasing scent into cooling air. This is the hour of transition, when diurnal predators retreat and nocturnal ones begin to stir, and when visual certainty gives way to approximation. In this shifting light, something impossible seems to happen. A creature hovers in front of a flower, wings a blur, body suspended with mechanical precision. It looks like a bird. It moves like one. And yet it is neither feathered nor fragile in the way it appears. The Hummingbird Hawk-moth has entered the scene, carrying with it one of the most unusual survival strategies in the insect world. At first glance, the deception feels almost accidental. The moth's body is compact and muscular, its wings long and narrow, beating so rapidly they dissolve into transparency. As it feeds, it remains airborne, hovering inches from the flower, extending a long proboscis deep into the bloom. The posture, the motion, even the rhythm of feeding echo that of a hummingbird. To human observers, the resemblance is striking. To predators, it is something more consequential. It is a problem of classification that must be solved quickly, or not at all. The Hummingbird Hawk-moth does not rely on color patterns or static mimicry to alter perception. Its wings are not boldly marked with warning colors, nor does it attempt to resemble a leaf or twig at rest. Its deception exists almost entirely in motion. Flight in this case is not just locomotion, it is identity. By moving in a way that violates expectations for a moth, it forces predators to hesitate, recalibrate, and often fail to act. Hovering flight is rare among insects. Most rely on intermittent flapping and gliding, landing frequently to rest or feed. Hovering demands constant energy expenditure and extraordinary control. The Hummingbird Hawk-moth achieves this through powerful flight muscles that occupy much of its thorax, supported by a high metabolic rate that allows sustained wing beats at remarkable speed. Each wing beat generates lift on both the downstroke and upstroke, allowing the moth to remain stable in turbulent air. This stability is deceptive. From a predator's perspective, hovering prey presents a targeting challenge. Many insect predators are adapted to intercept predictable flight paths or to strike at stationary targets. The moth offers neither. It remains in constant micro-motion, adjusting position in response to air currents and flower movement, creating a shifting target that resists anticipation. Locking on requires precision and timing that few predators can afford in low light. Speed compounds the problem. When startled, the Hummingbird Hawk-moth does not dart away in a straight line. It accelerates abruptly, often changing direction mid-flight, then resumes hovering elsewhere moments later. This rapid transition from apparent stillness to sudden displacement disrupts pursuit. The predator's visual system, already challenged by fading light, must reacquire a target that refuses to behave like expected prey. Underlying this agility is a sensory system finely tuned to motion. The moth's large eyes provide wide fields of view, detecting changes in light and movement quickly. Its nervous system processes this information with minimal delay, translating perception into immediate adjustments in wing motion. The result is flight that appears effortless but is, in reality, an ongoing negotiation between physics and physiology. The resemblance to a hummingbird adds another layer of confusion. Birds occupy a different category of risk for many predators. A small bird hovering at a flower may be aggressive, territorial, or capable of swift retaliation. Even predators that could overpower such a bird may hesitate, weighing the potential cost. The Hummingbird Hawk-moth benefits from this uncertainty. It does not need predators to believe it is a bird with certainty. It only needs to blur the boundary enough to delay attack. This strategy works especially well in environments where hummingbirds or similar nectar-feeding birds are present or remembered. Predators learn associations over time, pairing certain movement patterns with danger or difficulty. The moth inserts itself into this learned framework, exploiting expectations shaped by experience. In regions without hummingbirds, the effect may be weaker, but the hovering flight still confounds predators accustomed to moths that land and rest. The ecological niche of the Hummingbird Hawk-moth reinforces this approach. Feeding on nectar requires access to flowers without landing, particularly those with narrow openings or delicate structures. Hovering allows the moth to exploit resources that are less accessible to heavier insects, reducing competition. At the same time, feeding while airborne minimizes vulnerability. The moth is never fully committed to a surface, always one wing beat away from escape. Migration adds further context. Some populations of hummingbird hawk moths travel long distances seasonally, crossing landscapes where predator communities change. A survival strategy based on confusion rather than specific mimicry adapts well to such variability. Flight performance remains effective regardless of local predator species. Speed and unpredictability are universally challenging to counter. Predators that attempt to hunt the moth face repeated frustration. A bird may launch an attack only to miss as the moth shifts position unexpectedly. A bat using echolocation may struggle to track rapid changes in velocity and direction against background echoes. Each failed attempt reinforces avoidance. Over time, predators may learn that these fast hovering insects are inefficient targets, redirecting effort toward easier prey. This learning has cascading effects. By occupying a perceptual gray zone, the hummingbird hawk moth reduces predation pressure not only on itself, but potentially on other insects that share similar flight spaces. Predators adjust hunting strategies, altering patterns of activity that ripple through the ecosystem. Confusion, in this sense, becomes an ecological force. There is a subtle cost to this lifestyle. Hovering flight demands constant energy intake. The moth must feed frequently to sustain its metabolism, tying its survival closely to the availability of flowering plants. Changes in habitat, climate, or plant communities can disrupt this balance. Yet where flowers persist, the moth thrives, its presence a reminder that speed and control can substitute for concealment. As darkness deepens, the hummingbird hawk moth continues its work, moving from bloom to bloom with unwavering focus. It does not pause to rest. It does not disappear into shadow. It remains visible, audible even, wings humming softly in the air. And still, predators fail to capitalize. The moth survives not by avoiding attention, but by shaping it, bending perception just enough to stay one step ahead. In the end, the lesson is clear. In nature, defense does not always take the form of armor, venom, or camouflage. Sometimes it takes the form of motion so unexpected that it dissolves intention. The hummingbird hawk moth lives on that edge, where identity is fluid and certainty slips away. Survival is not always hiding. it can be confusing the aim.